Hi, there's a lot going on with our government and the funding, and that involves wild horses too. So I'm Colleen Calusa. A little bit about myself is I have a business. I'm a sole proprietor. It is not a nonprofit. I do not solicit for funds or favors. And we are all volunteers. And I'm having my morning cup of coffee, and I have some questions about the subject of wild horses right now, at this moment in time, because there's a lot going on. So I called up Laura Lee, and hi, Laura. Are you
Hey,
out?
Colleen.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Laura Lee. I'm the founder and president of Wild Horse Education, and we are a national nonprofit for that advocates for wild horses, their humane care on and off the range.
Okay, so we've talked before because
Yes, we have.
yes, because I've been out there for 3 years looking at the different organizations and trying my best to do research. I feel like I am trying to be helpful for the public, for our elected officials, for the wild horses, for our public lands and our natural environment. And so I thought the best way that I could serve is to, look around, see who has good information. And as I was doing research, your name kept coming up, your company kept coming up. So then I started calling you, and you were happy to talk to me about it. And so now I'm calling you now about the subject of the report that has just recently come out in early May. The report from the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, that's in the Department of Interior, and it presented its plan for wild horses and burros for fiscal year 2020. So we're on the same page here, and I'm just going to read what I have written here about that. Congress allocated an additional $21 million for that program in December 2019. With the conditions, BLM needed to account for how it was going to use the money by producing a plan for management of wild horses and burro populations, and Congress would have 60 days after that to examine the plan and then make the decision on whether to spend 21 million of taxpayer funds on this plan. And that is this plan that it looks like,
Yep, I'm
this.
familiar with it.
Okay, we're on the same page with that. So I'd like to ask you, on behalf of the public and myself included, of course, and I'd like to ask you about your reaction to that plan, and then go through some of the other organizations' reactions and their action alerts, because I'm confused, because I've read all the action alerts from multiple organizations. And like
Which you should. You should, as a member of the public, everybody should be doing that. Don't send anything until you read it and understand what you're sending.
So there we are with you and your reaction to the report. Do you want to start there and then go through what you're asking of the public, and then we can go through the other organizations, and we can kind of, do a little looking deeper.
Sure. When we look at any report or any conversation, the language of that conversation really should be, defined and governing what we're speaking about. So Congress asked them for a plan in how money would be spent. And basically, it's supposed to be a comprehensive planning document. Well, in front of you, you have 33 pages. That's over 10 months late, no table of contents, and it's not a comprehensive report. It's a wish list put together by a select group of stakeholders. I was not included. I know many other organizations that are real on-the-ground organizations were not included. This is a wish list, a spending list with a select group of people. And what they do in that document is they fulfill the wishes of the stakeholders. So it starts with roundups, moves to even things like, contracts and spending for more holding facilities, and then contracts and spending for fertility control. But when we finally get to the conversation about management planning, which is where the system is broken, there's practically nothing written there. So it's not mandating BLM to do what's called a herd management area plan, an HMAP, prior to taking any actions. This is 21 million that's going to go to fund roundups, and a couple of fertility control projects being pushed by the select group of stakeholders that they've had at that table. And it's an obscenity. I mean, we should all be embarrassed that this is considered 33 pages is a comprehensive report. I mean, can you imagine if they gave 33 pages to Congress on bears ears? And that's a geographically smaller issue than wild horses are. I mean, this whole thing is an embarrassment. Again, we're not talking about management. We're not talking about planning. We're talking about fulfilling the wishes of the stakeholders.
So this is the same thing
Same crap we've always gotten.
year after year. And in the
Year after year.
haven't you pushed back against that in past years and succeeded in doing that?
Yeah, with the last go around, they gave us a 25-page document, and we were able to get, through grassroots, through people writing letters and calling their representatives, get the understanding that what BLM had handed them in the last round was not a management plan. And so Congress this time asked for a management plan. And that management plan was supposed to be out near the beginning of the budget debate for this round. And BLM is 10 months late, and we're already in the next round of conversations. So we were able to get those strings attached that BLM had to put in this management plan, and then 60 days later, that 21 mil would be released, that additional 21 mil would be released. This report, released on May 8th, is what BLM sees as the key to unlock that 21 mil. One of the biggest issues here is that these other advocates are pushing for a simplistic tool, fertility control. It's a tool. It's not a solution.
Well,
And that's what the
can I interrupt you for just a minute and just say that they just threw together this report, Bureau of Land Management? I mean, that's what it appears to me. It's not sufficient in any
absolutely,
way. So
absolutely.
why are we accepting it at all? Let's push back on it then, totally?
Absolutely is what we should be doing. That thing that they're calling a comprehensive report could have been put together by any intern in any office that just copied and pasted from various documents and threw headings on there. There's no comprehensive detail about any of the subjects in there. There's no discussion. There's no real data points. The only thing they try to give data points to is adoption and the sales program. And if you look at those and you understand what they really mean, what it really means is we've got more wild horses slipping out the cracks at the backside and heading to that kill pen. There's no oversight. And so when you really know what you're reading, the only area that they actually try to claim as a success, which is their adoption and sale program, what they're saying, that's not a success. That's danger because BLM is not doing oversight on the backside. And so if you read the report in reverse and not start with roundups, which BLM puts first, but start at the backside with oversight, research, herd management area plans, that's reading the report backwards. BLM needs to flip that thing and then really go into detail, because that's where all of the problems lie in this program. And if we just push this forward, more roundups, a few areas get darted, you know what happens? We're back in that 50-year loop again, and not a single problem has been solved, except you got a lot of happy stakeholders.
Well,
Or what BLM is now defining as stakeholders, which don't include people like me or you.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of frustration out there. And, normally I do tabling events. I'm out there talking to the public. I set up my booth. I'm in Lake Tahoe. I'm in Apple Hill in California, Lake Tahoe, California, Nevada, Carson City, Reno, Earth Day, Nevada State Parade. I've got my table out there. I talk to people and they are frustrated. And maybe I can, an analogy might be, and this is the feeling out there, I feel like we've got broken plumbing, and then we've got the faucet handles, and we're trying to kind of do something with the handles here, but basically we've got water that is, I feel like I'm just circling around and the drain is right there and I'm just going around and around and around and nothing is really happening. And that is bad for advocacy, because you don't want advocacy. People need to feel like they're making a difference.
Well, you know, from my perspective, it's not bad for advocacy that I'm concerned about. It's bad for the wild horse. What we have, and your analogy is wonderful. We have rotted plumbing, leaky pipes. Some of them have corrosive materials in it, let's put it that way. And what we're doing is we're deciding which new faucet we should put on this plumbing without fixing any of the plumbing. And that's what this report really does demonstrate right now. So that 21 mil is going to go to roundups, the experiments on new fertility control, and maybe 1 or 2 areas getting their darting paid for. The BLM pays for that. So BLM reimburses gas and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's what this budget is going to pay for. It's not doing anything to fix the problem. It's not going into the plumbing. The plumbing all lies in something called the herd management area plan. That's the beginning of the plumbing.
Well, then let's talk about, can we talk about your, how you're addressing this?
Yes, we're trying to address it again, just like we did last time. Last time, we got Congress to recognize that that report was not a plan. It did not fix anything. This time, we have to get Congress to recognize the right language of planning, because you know, I'm going in there and writing these letters and having these conversations, and they're saying to me, well, you're the only one talking to us about the National Academy of Sciences. You're the only one talking to us about herd management area plans. Well, I hand them a copy of the BLM handbook that outlines how BLM is supposed to be managing, and they're not doing a thing. And they're telling me, you are the only one speaking about this. If you're the only one speaking about this, why is it important? Why should we listen?
I'm speaking about it.
Thank you very much. And I know a few other people are speaking about it as well. But the other national organizations are not.
Okay, well, let's go into, I'm looking at, I've got these action alerts asking us advocates, the public, to send these messages to our elected officials, because this is in
and I'm sure it's very confusing for you.
Yeah, and I'm
as a member of the public, yes.
Right now, and the very shortest message you have a lot of details in here, and you did a click and send here too. But the shortest message you have here is simply BLM needs to be, tell your reps BLM, Bureau of Land Management, must be restricted from using any funding in a herd management area where they have not created a management plan, herd management area plan.
Yes, that's simple. And if people would pick up the phone, the reason I have all of that other information is so that when you call your reps, you can be conversational on it. You can answer some of those questions they may have. But really, that's the statement. We have to hammer home to Congress. They have to mandate that HMAP, or BLM is going to continue to skip it, and we're going to be back next year, and the year after, and the year after, in this same hamster loop, claiming this program is broken because we're not fixing the plumbing. The plumbing is the HMAP. So
right.
That's my plea, is please pick up that phone and make a call.
Okay, so would you like to move along here and look at some of these other things I've printed out? So I've got here, and by the way, it all started, well, it didn't all start that way, but I pushed back very hard against these organizations right up here. I'll just say that right there. And this plan that I pushed back on, and I was out there pushing back on it, and then I noticed that you were too, and no one else was. And you know, I think people are like, who are you? And I go, well, I'm within Humane Society United States. I was handpicked to serve on their state council, handpicked in Nevada. And then I became aware of this, and it's like, no, this is not what you're telling the public that you're supporting. This is not, you're not showing integrity. This is not what you're telling the public that your position is. And
And it's been their position since 2015,
yes,
which
which
the public doesn't really understand how long this backdoor deal has been going
I
on.
have
Yes.
actually asked for my money that I have given to them to be refunded to me since 2015, since they started going down that road of dishonesty, I feel. But I've asked for my money to be returned. And I made a whole, YouTube thing about that because I had to. I had to explain the, the how it was disingenuous. I had to. So it started with that, and this is, and then and they still have the same position. Their position on this is rounding up horses and using fertility control. Well, Humane Society does have a connection to that because they're the registrants of the temporary fertility control (PZP).
Hmm.
Okay, so they do have there is a connection here, and
Yeah.
they do roundups and use PZP. That's their plan. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm correct, right? Okay, so now I'm looking at some of these other alerts, and I look at organizations' websites, but that is not important to me when you get down to it. What is important to me is what actions are they taking, and what actions are they asking me to take? So I've got this one here. Let's look at this. They're saying call your representatives and senators in Washington, D.C. Just take a moment and call to contact. I'm calling to ask my senator to contact Appropriations Committee in support of proposed language for the 2021 budget bill to require BLM to spend 10% of its Wild Horse and Burro program budget on humane fertility control instead of spending all of its funds to round up and warehouse wild horses. The language also prohibits dangerous and inhumane sterilization surgeries. Thank you. And by the way, this is not on their website. You have to be on their email list. So if you go to organization's website, I will say you have to sign up for the emails. You're not really getting a full picture of the organization until you sign up, and then you make a comparison and really dig deeper.
Right.
So
And I personally find it pretty tragic. So, the organizations that went to the table in 2015 and pushed this agenda, which has caused everything to slide backwards because they weren't fighting for management. They weren't fighting for management planning. They weren't fighting for forage allocation, habitat preservation, changes in AML, management planning, database decisions. They weren't fighting for any of those things. They were fighting for this fertility control. And then you had a faction that presented itself as opposition to the path forward, the 10 years to AML. But when you look at their action item, what they're asking people to do is exactly the same as what's being pushed by 10 years to AML path forward people. What they want is they want a designated amount of money, a percentage of the budget, going to this fertility control. And that solves nothing. It
well,
does not.
I'm
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
what this is saying is we don't have a problem with the number of roundups. We don't have a problem with most of the 21 million going to roundups, which is where it's going to go. Isn't that correct? Isn't that what they're asking for it to go
Yeah,
to?
well, 10% of 21 mil is what, 2.1 mil? So that's what they're asking for to go to fertility control. That leaves 19 mil going to roundups.
Which is they're doing massive roundups. The schedule came out, so it's pretty, that's where the money's going to go. They're asking for the money.
Over 5,000 wild horses are going to lose everything between now and just October 7th under this budget. Yes.
So if Congress pushes back and says you're not going to get the 21 million because it's mostly going to roundups, what would happen then?
Well, basically, that's my action item. My action item is basically what we're trying to get done is that BLM should not be allowed to spend any money in a herd where they haven't created an HMAP, a management plan. And so basically what that would do to this summer roundup schedule is all but one of those HMAs would be removed off that roundup schedule. They would have to go back and begin to address forage allocations, how AML, and they would have to do it with all stakeholders. It would involve the public, not just this little select group that they're identifying, and I am so offended that they're identifying as their stakeholders. When so many of them, they're not even in states in the West. These are organizations with corporate offices on the East Coast, corporate offices on the West Coast. These are not boots on the ground small organizations in this stakeholder meeting. These are corporate whales. And then you've got other groups actually pushing the same agenda. They're not fighting for that planning document. That's what needs to be done first. So if Congress releases any money, they should just be releasing like $4 million to get BLM to do those management plans, and maybe $2 million for whatever emergency roundup might arise this summer. And that's it. That's all Congress should be releasing. And that's our stand. That's Wild Horse Education's position.
Well, then we've got this other group here. I got their action alert. It's pretty easy to see that Return to Freedom is, and after all, this was their plan. And they're saying fertility control. That's it. That's all I've got out of this from them. So clearly they are out front saying we are all about fertility control. We're not.
That's why they did what they did in 2015.
Yeah.
It's all about fertility control.
That's why I say their name, because they're clear about their position, even though their website doesn't reflect that. And then I've got, I don't know, I've got another thing here from another organization, and they're saying, let's see, place a call and urge your legislators to hold BLM accountable for their gross mismanagement of the Wild Horse and Burro program. $1 billion for the same old Roundup and stockpile solution is not the answer. Sterilization, which kills the wild and our wild horses, is not the answer. Humane fertility control and partnerships with volunteer organizations are a good start, and the foundation is ready and willing to help. What do you think of that?
Are they telling you, so they're talking about gross mismanagement? Is there action item there specific to how to address gross mismanagement? No, that's a great phrase. What they're really asking you to do is ask for more fertility control. And again, that sets us right back in the same hamster wheel we've always been in. And that frustration that you talked to me about with the public, that's going to increase, because we're still going to be trying to address water, fence lines, forage, low AML, families, massive roundups. When you say fertility control as your first point and your only point, what you're agreeing with when you begin your conversation is that what we need first and foremost is population growth suppression. And that means you agree with everything that's stated in that hamster wheel. And so really, we need the public to pick up that phone, make that call, and urge Congress to put restrictions on any funding spent by BLM, that it cannot be used for roundups or fertility control or any proposed action until they first justified it in the management plan, the HMAP. Then and only then have they created any kind of justification, any kind of management plan to take any action. So that's what we really need the public to do to address decades of gross mismanagement.
Well, now
I hope that's clear.
Well, I have another action alert here from an organization that says you must reject the latest BLM report and the 21 million in additional funding unless the funding is only used for humane reversible PZP fertility control. What do you think of that?
Same thing. So basically, they also use that lead-in, that frustration with the same old system that everybody's angry at. But what they're asking you to do is just push for fertility control. Fertility control is a tool, like a hammer or a screwdriver. First, you need to know if you've got a nail or a screw before you decide which tool you're going to use. That HMAP comes first before you even say, this herd is going to be done with, PZP darting, and how are we going to do that PZP darting? Because we need all of these other objectives met. I personally, I'm for fertility control, but I see it also as a great data collection tool to determine preferred and critical habitat, you know, what we need to protect for the horses, herd genetics, what we need to protect, all of those things. But none of that conversation happens in fertility control. That conversation happens in the HMAP, in the management plan. And that's what we need to get. So if things like lack of forage, you know, horses getting practically none of the forage, low AMLs, there's no water improvements for wild horses. You want fire fuels included in the issue. You want, you know, study programs. You want fertility control, dartable fertility control, whatever it is that you want. That conversation happens in the HMAP. Right now, say BLM creates a pilot program and drops it, just drops it, because they got the money that they needed to get all the removals done. And now they don't need all those organizations that went along with the removals because they got what they needed. Well, they could just drop those plants. If it's in that HMAP, we have recourse under law to force them to continue. And so that's another reason why the HMAP is important, because it gives us a legal leg to stand on.
And that is
And we don't have that now.
that's a long-term law looking in the future. That's
But it's like turning on that faucet. So let's go back to your analogy. So first we've got to get down, we've got to get out that old plumbing, we've got to fix those leaks, we've got to do all of those things. So when we turn on the faucet, the water flows and it flows clean, instead of just looking at what kind of faucet we're going to change. So when we're talking about long-term needs, we're also talking about short-term needs. You need to turn that faucet on, get your water. That means you've got to go down and fix that plumbing. Now you can fix it with duct tape and bubble gum, but that's not going to last. It's not even going to get you through the winter.
well,
Go in and replace those pipes. So basically that's what I'm saying. We got to get in there and replace those pipes.
right. And I want to end this pretty soon here because it's going on a little bit long.
Oh yeah, and I do have a call coming up in a couple of minutes.
Okay, and so, but how I see it is if, look, I just see if we don't push back against this BLM report, this plan that BLM has, it's roundups. They're asking for 21 million. It's roundups. Let's just push back on the report, not parse out parts and focus on that part. And it's so I don't see any other way to look at it. That's my opinion. But I will tell you,
No, and your opinion is dead on. As a taxpayer, what that 21 million is going to buy you is exactly what you had last year and exactly what you had the year before.
okay,
It's
okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna have to shorten this up. But it all started with me because I go, well, you know what? I was used to going into my legislator's office, and because I was part of Humane Society of the United States, and they train you to, to go do that. So I did, and I walked in with the National Academy of Sciences report, this report, which everyone, well, not everyone, but most people, most organizations, advocacy organizations, are supporting this because it's the best scientific body in the world, and they're looking at BLM's program and they're saying, this is how you can improve your program. These are our recommendations. And I know organizations are agreeing with this. But when I went in to talk to my elected officials in Nevada, they had no idea what I was talking about. And I thought, well, that is so weird. Okay, there's something not right here. And
Yeah.
and I didn't like that, because I thought the advocacy groups that said they were for this were introducing it to these new senators to educate the new senators. I'm like, what's going on here? So I didn't like that. And now I've written to my senator. Here's one from Senator Cortez Masto in Nevada. And I got a response back from her when I sent her something recently. And it's talking about, I'm willing to explore innovative pilot programs such as adoption of birth control measures in order to stabilize the wild horse and burro populations in a humane manner. And then she goes on to talk about the long-awaited report, the BLM report. I understand. Then she talks about, let's see, the Pine Nut Range in Nevada, implementing, she goes, fortunately, the volunteers in the Pine Nut Range in Nevada are in the process of implementing a successful PZP program. I understand that this doesn't solve the entire problem, but it demonstrates progress toward achieving a humane and fiscally responsible solution, and then and adoptions. And I'm like, wait a minute, what about a
What
comprehensive
about,
approach?
right?
What about this that I went into your office and I was talking about? And I'll never forget when, you know, I went in there and talked to staff, and they go, look, I just want to talk about facts and science. And I go, I've got that, it's right here. And I go, haven't you seen this before? And they go, no.
Right. And that's exactly the answer I was getting, was you're the only one talking about this National Academy of Sciences report, and you're the only one talking about these HMAPs, this planning document. Everybody's telling us, you know, we can do fertility control, and that basically says that this push for fertility control, what that's doing is it's buying into the overpopulation. It's buying into the wild horses overrunning our range. It's buying into all of the things that bother people first and foremost. And so what that's done with Congress is it's solidified the fact that we need massive roundups. We need massive fertility control. We need, before we even say, well, wait a minute, the National Academy of Sciences report, AMLs are not calculated scientifically. Population survey methods aren't correct. You know, we're doing nothing for water improvement and habitat preservation. You know, we're putting up more and more fences. We're squeezing those HMAs down. Yeah, I mean, in acreage, yeah, it sounds like a lot of acreage, but when you remove all the other acreage and forage being used for everything else, you know, I mean, wild horses are getting less and less and less and less every single year, and we're not doing that management plan first. So really,
Okay.
this,
I think I can.
oh, and I gotta go. I do
know,
have a call.
and they don't, you know, the thing is, my Senator Cortez Masto and Rosen, I don't think they're getting a clear message. I would ask all these organizations to agree. We do not like the BLM program, their plan. Let's push back against it. Let's have one voice, solidify here. We can all come together on that, correct? No one is disagreeing about that. As far as I can see, let's push back on this report, throw it out, have them redo it, because silence is acquiescing. And then
Yeah,
I'd like to talk to you again if I can in the future here soon.
absolutely,
In the morning
absolutely.
times.
But
And on
I
my,
do need to.
and you have a bigger picture out there that I wanted to get to in the future. And that's a comprehensive approach, which I agree with. That to me is problem solving, your comprehensive approach about mining.
It's management.
And I know
It's management.
these other organizations, you're on their documents, you have achieved a certain standing and status so that you can be included on these major documents with these major groups. And I know with Patagonia too, you're there, and I read their book, so I'm about advocating to make a real change with
Yeah,
this.
no, and I mean, I've given testimony to the GAO on livestock and on sage grouse and on extremism and on all of these things. But for some reason, that little stakeholder table doesn't want anybody who's talking about how to fix management. They only want people who are talking about population growth suppression.
Well, there's
And
more
so that's for,
conversation to
we can
come.
have that conversation
Okay.
another day. But what I really need, I really, really, really need people to pick up that phone and push management first. And then we can decide what tools to use. We need the HMAP before we pick. We have to identify what we're doing before we put a tool on top. So
Right.
thank you so much. Thank you. And whenever you have more questions, I'll join you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for your time, Laura. And
Sure.
okay, bye.
Bye-bye.